My name is Priscilla, and I'm 32 years old. As the daughter of wealthy real estate developers, I always lived in my sister Amanda's shadow. When our parents unexpectedly passed away, the will reading shattered my world. Amanda received a $3.2 million luxury villa, while I got an empty parking lot. With cruel smiles, my parents' note read, "You can always sleep under the stars." Little did they know that this final insult would become my greatest triumph when I transformed that barren lot into a thriving business. Before I share my story, let me know where you're watching from. Hit subscribe if you've ever been underestimated by family, and stick around to see how I turned betrayal into success. Growing up in an affluent neighborhood in Boston, I never felt like I truly belonged in my own family. My parents, Jonathan and Margaret Wilson, had built a successful real estate empire from the ground up. Our sprawling colonial home with its manicured lawns and marble fountains was the envy of the neighborhood. But inside those walls, I lived with the constant reminder that I was the lesser daughter. My sister Amanda was 4 years older, and in my parents' eyes, perfect in every way. She had our mother's classic beauty, tall, slender, with flowing blonde hair and striking blue eyes that seemed to charm everyone she met. I took after our father's side with brown hair, hazel eyes, and a more athletic build. But the differences went far beyond appearance. Amanda excelled at everything without seeming to try. Straight A's came naturally while I studied for hours to maintain my B-plus average. She was the social butterfly who effortlessly drew people to her while I struggled with shyness and making friends. Piano recitals, debate competitions, tennis tournaments. Amanda collected trophies and accolades while I searched desperately for my own place to shine. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" became the painful refrain of my childhood. My father never said those exact words, but his actions spoke volumes. When Amanda received a new designer dress for a school dance, I got a discount store version. When she expressed interest in something, private lessons were immediately arranged. My own interests were treated as passing phases that didn't merit investment. I still remember my 12th birthday when I asked for horseback riding lessons after discovering a love for horses at summer camp. My mother promised to discuss it with my father, but the conversation I overheard that night still burns in my memory. "Priscilla wants riding lessons now," my mother said during their evening ritual of drinks on the patio. "What's the point?" my father replied without looking up from his newspaper. "She'll lose interest in a month like everything else. Amanda stuck with piano for 8 years, that's commitment. Priscilla just jumps from thing to thing." What he never understood was that I jumped from thing to thing because nothing I did ever earned their approval. Why continue something when your best efforts go unnoticed? The contrast between our treatments became impossible to ignore during our teen years. Amanda's Sweet 16 was a lavish affair with nearly 100 guests, a live band, and the unveiling of a brand new BMW convertible in the driveway with a giant red bow. My Sweet 16 2 years later was a dinner at our country club with my parents, Amanda, and two friends. My gift was a used Volkswagen that had previously been Amanda's car before she got her BMW. "You should be grateful," my mother said when she saw my disappointment. "Many girls your age don't have their own cars at all." She was right, of course. We were privileged, and I did have more than most. But children don't measure their worth against abstract others. They measure it against the love and value demonstrated within their own family. By that measurement, I consistently came up short. The most painful memory was the forgotten family vacation when I was 15. My parents had planned an elaborate 2-week trip to Italy, something Amanda had begged for after taking Italian classes. The night before departure, I came down with what we thought was a bad cold, and my mother suggested I stay home with our housekeeper until I felt better, then join them later. 3 days later, when the doctor confirmed it was just allergies, I eagerly called my parents to arrange my flight. The awkward silence on the phone still haunts me. "Well, sweetheart," my mother finally said, "we've already planned all our activities and tours. Maybe it's best if you stay home this time. We'll bring you something special." They returned with a small glass figurine of the Colosseum and stories I wasn't part of. The photos from that trip, my parents and Amanda smiling in front of ancient ruins eating gelato, Riding gondolas in Venice filled our family album. My absence wasn't even mentioned. Despite everything, I never stopped trying to earn my place in the family. In high school, I threw myself into student government and the school newspaper, developing leadership skills and a voice that no one at home seemed to hear. I discovered a talent for organization and planning that made me indispensable to teachers planning school events. Mrs. Thornton, my business education teacher, was the first person who truly saw me. "You have a natural mind for business, Priscilla," she told me after I created a successful fundraising campaign for the yearbook. "You see opportunities where others see obstacles." Her words planted a seed that would eventually become my salvation. If my family couldn't see my value, perhaps I could build something that would force them and everyone else to recognize it. By senior year, I had developed a resilience and self-reliance that would serve me well later in life. I learned to find validation in my own accomplishments, rather than waiting for my parents' approval. When my proposal for a student-run school store was approved by the principal, the success meant more because I had achieved it without family support. Throughout those formative years, the pattern was clear: emotional neglect dressed up as preparing me for the real world, while Amanda was sheltered and celebrated. This dynamic would continue into our adult lives and ultimately set the stage for the inheritance that would change everything. What I didn't realize then was that my parents' favoritism, painful as it was, had forced me to develop exactly the skills and determination I would one day need. Sometimes our greatest strengths are forged in the fires of our deepest hurts. College marked my first real taste of freedom and independence. Against my parents' wishes, I chose to study business at Northeastern University instead of following the liberal arts path they had suggested. "Art history would suit you," my mother had insisted. "Business is so aggressive. It doesn't really fit your personality, dear." What she really meant was, it didn't fit her perception of me as the softer, less capable daughter. But I had discovered a passion for entrepreneurship in my final years of high school, and for once, I stood my ground. My father reluctantly paid my tuition, but made it clear this was my choice, and therefore my responsibility to succeed. "Don't come crying to us when the math gets too difficult," he warned. Math had never been my problem, his lack of faith in me was. I threw myself into my studies with a determination born from years of being underestimated. Business concepts came naturally to me, particularly marketing and operations management. My professors noticed my drive, even if my family didn't. By junior year, I was on the dean's list and had secured a competitive internship at a growing tech company. The day I graduated with honors should have been one of my proudest moments. As I stood in my cap and gown scanning the crowd for my family, a sinking feeling grew in my stomach. The seats I had reserved remained empty throughout the ceremony. Later, I received a text from my mother. "So sorry we couldn't make it, sweetheart. Amanda's law school honors ceremony ran long and we couldn't get away. Dinner next week to celebrate." I cried in my apartment that night, not from sadness, but from a newfound clarity. I would never be their priority. The realization was both painful and liberating. I was finally free to build a life without the weight of seeking their approval. My first job after college was at a digital marketing startup, where the chaotic environment allowed me to take on responsibilities well beyond my job description. While my official title was marketing coordinator, within 6 months, I was managing client accounts, developing campaign strategies, and even helping with business development. The founder, a serial entrepreneur named David, became the mentor I had always craved. "You've got good instincts," he told me after I suggested a pivot that saved a struggling campaign. "You see the whole picture, not just your corner of it. That's rare in someone your age." It was during this time that I met Jasmine, who had become my closest friend and biggest supporter. She was the graphic designer at our company with a loud laugh and an unwavering loyalty to those she cared about. We bonded over late nights at the office and weekend brunches where we dreamed about the businesses we would someday build. Jasmine came from a tight-knit family who quickly adopted me into their fold, inviting me to holiday gatherings and treating me with the warmth my own family withheld. Through her, I learned what healthy family dynamics look like: people who celebrated each other's successes, rather than competing, who offered support without keeping score. As my career progressed, I moved to a larger marketing agency and eventually became the youngest account director in the company's history. My salary allowed me to rent a modest but comfortable one-bedroom apartment in a developing area of the city. I furnished it carefully with secondhand finds that I restored myself, creating a home that reflected my personality. Amanda, meanwhile, had graduated from law school and immediately joined a prestigious firm with help from our father's connections. She lived in a luxury condo in the heart of downtown, purchased with a loan from our parents that we all knew would never be repaid. Her social media was filled with vacations to exclusive resorts and dinners at restaurants where reservations were booked months in advance. Our parents' pride in Amanda's accomplishments was boundless and public. "My brilliant daughter just won her first major case," my father would announce at the country club. My own achievements were mentioned as afterthoughts, if at all. At 28, I decided to take a risk and launch my first entrepreneurial venture, a subscription box service featuring products from local artisans. I had saved enough for 6 months of operating costs and developed relationships with dozens of small businesses eager to participate. The concept was solid, my business plan meticulously researched. When I mentioned it to my parents during a rare family dinner, hoping perhaps for some encouragement, my father's dismissive laugh cut through my enthusiasm. "Subscription boxes, isn't that just a fad? People are canceling those left and right. Not when the products have real value and the curation is thoughtful," I countered, trying to maintain my composure. "My market research shows—" "Market research," he interrupted with a wave of his hand. "Nothing beats real-world experience, Priscilla. Maybe you should work for a few more years before trying to run your own show." Amanda, ever the favorite, added her own twist of the knife. "It's sweet that you want to help local artists, sis. Maybe you could volunteer at an art center instead, less financial risk." The condescension in her tone was unmistakable. In their eyes, I was still the less capable daughter playing at business, while Amanda was the serious professional. Despite their discouragement, I launched Artisan Boston 3 months later. The initial response was promising, with subscriptions growing steadily through word of mouth and social media. For 8 months, I ran the business alongside my full-time job, working 16-hour days and pouring my heart into every carefully packaged box. Then the supply chain issues hit. Several key artisans couldn't fulfill orders due to material shortages, while shipping costs suddenly doubled. As a small operation with thin margins, I couldn't absorb these increases without significantly raising prices. Subscriptions began to drop, and after 3 more months of struggling to keep it afloat, I made the difficult decision to shut down. The failure was devastating, but educational. I learned crucial lessons about contingency planning, pricing strategy, and the importance of capital reserves. What hurt most wasn't the failure itself, but having to face my family after they had predicted it. "Well, now you know why we were concerned," my mother said with what she probably thought was sympathetic understanding. "Not everyone is cut out to be an entrepreneur." The distance between us grew even wider after that. I limited my interactions with my family to obligatory holiday gatherings and occasional Sunday dinners, where I would smile through their subtle jabs and Amanda's humble brags about her latest courtroom victory or vacation. I never stopped dreaming of building something of my own, something that would succeed on such a scale that even my parents couldn't diminish it. I just never imagined that opportunity would come through their final act of favoritism, a parting gift that was meant to hurt, but would ultimately change everything. The call came on a Tuesday morning in early April. I was preparing for a client presentation when my phone lit up with Amanda's name, an unusual occurrence since she rarely called unless she needed something. "Priscilla." Her voice sounded strange, tight, with an emotion I couldn't immediately identify. "There's been an accident. Mom and Dad's boat. They're gone." The world tilted on its axis as she explained through broken sentences. Our parents had taken their yacht out for a weekend trip down the coast. A sudden storm, a mayday call, cut short a Coast Guard search that recovered the damaged vessel, but not its passengers. After 48 hours, the search had been called off. Jonathan and Margaret Wilson, aged 62 and 59, were presumed dead. Grief is a complex emotion under the best circumstances. When your relationship with the deceased is complicated by years of emotional distance and unresolved hurt, it becomes something even more tangled and confusing. I cried for the parents I had always wanted them to be, for the approval I would never receive, for the complicated love I still felt despite everything. I mourned the conversations we would never have, the reconciliation that could never come. The days after their disappearance passed in a blur of funeral arrangements and legal meetings. Amanda, true to form, took control of everything from the flower arrangements to the eulogy. When I offered to help, she assigned me minor tasks like collecting photos for the memorial display or ordering catering for the reception. "I know how busy you are with work," she said, with the same condescending kindness she had perfected since childhood. "I don't mind handling the important decisions." The funeral was a grand affair, befitting the prominent community figures our parents had been. Hundreds of people filled the church, business associates, country club friends, former clients, all sharing stories about Jonathan and Margaret's generosity and vision. I sat beside Amanda in the front row, feeling like an imposter in my own grief, as strangers told me how lucky I had been to have such wonderful parents. 2 weeks after the funeral, we met with our parents' longtime attorney, Mr. Harrington, for the reading of the will. The meeting was set for 10 o'clock in his downtown office, with its imposing mahogany furniture and views of the harbor where our parents' boat had launched for the last time. Amanda arrived in a designer black dress that somehow managed to be both appropriate for mourning and flattering to her figure. I wore a simple navy suit, the most expensive item in my wardrobe purchased for client presentations. The contrast between us had never felt more stark. Mr. Harrington greeted us with somber professionalism, offering condolences before getting down to business. He explained that our parents had updated their will just 6 months earlier, which was standard for them as they regularly adjusted their estate planning with changes in their assets. "Your parents built substantial wealth through their business acumen." He began shuffling papers importantly. "Their estate includes multiple properties, investment accounts, and of course their business holdings." I braced myself for the expected outcome, the bulk of the estate going to Amanda with some smaller portion left to me. I had made peace with this likelihood years ago. "To my daughter, Amanda Wilson." Mr. Harrington read from the document. "I leave our primary residence in Beacon Hill, valued at $3.2 million, along with its contents, and the sum of $1 million in cash and securities." Amanda nodded beside me, as though this was exactly what she had expected. Mr. Harrington continued, "To my daughter, Priscilla Wilson." He paused, adjusting his glasses. Something in his expression made my stomach clench. "I leave the commercial property located at 87 Franklin Street, currently an undeveloped parking lot valued at $150,000. The room seemed to shrink around me as the words registered. A parking lot. They had left me an empty parking lot while Amanda received a mansion and $1 million. "There is a personal note attached to this bequest," Mr. Harrington added, clearly uncomfortable. He slid a sealed envelope across the desk toward me. With trembling fingers, I opened it and unfolded the single sheet of expensive stationery covered in my father's bold handwriting. "Priscilla, you were always the practical one, more interested in business than luxury. This property is in a developing area with potential if you have the vision to see it something you've claimed to have. You can always sleep under the stars if things don't work out. We trust you'll make use of this opportunity better than you did with your failed subscription box venture. Dad and Mom." The casual cruelty took my breath away. Even from beyond the grave, they had found a way to belittle my efforts and underscore their favoritism. The comment about sleeping under the stars was particularly cutting, a reference to a family camping trip when I was 9, when I had excitedly built my own shelter that collapsed in the middle of the night, leaving me crying in the rain, while everyone else stayed dry in the premium tent my father had bought. Amanda reached over and read the note, her eyes widening slightly before her face settled into an expression of fake sympathy. "Oh, Priscilla, you know how Dad was with his jokes. I'm sure they meant well." She patted my hand before turning back to Mr. Harrington. "Is there anything else?" The attorney cleared his throat. "There are some smaller bequests to charity and longtime employees. The remainder of the business holdings are placed in a trust with Amanda as the primary trustee." Of course they were. I sat in stunned silence as he explained the details of the trust and the steps needed to transfer the properties into our names. Amanda asked questions about tax implications and management responsibilities, while I struggled to process the magnitude of the insult my parents had delivered with their final act. As we left the attorney's office, Amanda offered what she probably thought was generosity. Look, once I get settled in the house, maybe we can talk about some kind of stipend for you from the trust. Something to help you out. Her condescension was the final straw. Keep your money, Amanda. I don't need your help. Don't be proud, Priscilla. That parking lot isn't going to pay your rent. I walked away without responding, tears blurring my vision as I made my way to the subway station. In my apartment that night, I finally let the full weight of grief and betrayal crash over me. I screamed into my pillow, broke a vase against the wall, and cried until my throat was raw and my eyes were swollen. When Jasmine arrived with takeout food and wine after my incoherent phone call, I showed her the note and explained the inheritance. Those absolute monsters, she fumed, pacing my small living room. Who does that to their own daughter? And that comment about sleeping under the stars. What kind of sick joke is that? The kind my family has always made at my expense. I replied, emotionally exhausted. I just never thought they'd take it this far. What are you going to do? She asked, refilling my wine glass. It was the question that would define the next chapter of my life. In that moment, curled on my sofa with puffy eyes and a broken heart, I couldn't see past the hurt. But somewhere beneath the pain, a small voice whispered that familiar refrain from childhood. I'll show them. I'll make them see me. I don't know yet, I told Jasmine, but I'm not giving Amanda the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart. That night after Jasmine left, I sat on my balcony looking at the actual stars above the city lights. My parents thought they had given me nothing of value, just a final punchline in the ongoing joke that was their regard for me. But what if they had accidentally given me exactly what I needed instead of what they thought I deserved? I fell asleep with that question echoing in my mind, not yet ready to answer it, but feeling the first tentative stirrings of determination beneath my grief. The parking lot sat on the edge of the newly developing waterfront district, a formerly industrial area that was slowly being transformed into a mix of businesses, restaurants, and residential lofts. From the street, it looked utterly unremarkable, a rectangular patch of cracked asphalt surrounded by a chain-link fence, with a simple payment box for the occasional cars that parked there. 2 days after the will reading, I stood at the entrance key in hand, surveying what was now my only inheritance. The morning sun beat down on my shoulders as I unlocked the rusty gate and stepped onto my property for the first time. Disappointment settled heavily in my chest as I walked the perimeter. The lot could hold perhaps 30 cars, when full though only 3 were currently parked there. Weeds pushed through cracks in the pavement, and faded yellow lines marked the spaces. A single metal lamppost stood at the center, its light fixture broken and dangling by wires. Not exactly the Beacon Hill mansion, is it? I muttered to myself, kicking at a piece of gravel. As I completed my inspection, a colorful truck pulled up to the entrance. A woman with bright red hair leaned out the window. Are you the new owner? She called. The guy who used to collect the daily fee said someone inherited the place. I nodded, walking over to her truck, a mobile kitchen painted with vibrant images of tacos and burritos. I'm Priscilla. This place was my parents', and now it's mine. Maria Gonzalez, she replied with a warm smile. I park here 3 days a week to catch the lunch crowd from those new offices across the street. Your parents were charging me $20 a day, cash only. I hadn't even considered that the lot might have regular customers beyond random parking. Do other food trucks use this space too? Used to be more of us, but your father raised the rates last year, so most went elsewhere. Shame, really. When there were 5 or 6 of us, we drew bigger crowds. People like options. A spark of interest flickered in my mind. How many food trucks operate in this area of the city? Maria laughed. Dozens, honey, but we're always fighting for good locations. Most of the prime spots downtown have waiting lists or require expensive permits. As she spoke, I noticed a steady stream of people emerging from the office building across the street. Several headed straight for Maria's truck, while others glanced over disappointedly before continuing down the block. What kind of food do people ask for that you don't offer? I asked, watching the pedestrian patterns. Everything Asian, fusion gourmet, grilled cheese, wood-fired pizza, you name it. The lunch crowd around here is young professionals with money to spend and only 30 minutes to eat. They want quality and variety. I thanked Maria and continued my survey of the property with new eyes. The location suddenly seemed less dismal. 3 blocks east was the new Performing Arts Center. 2 blocks north, developers were converting an old warehouse into luxury apartments. The area had foot traffic during the day and was beginning to have evening activity as well. That night, I called Jasmine and asked her to meet me at the lot the following day during lunch. "Bring your camera," I told her. "I want to document something." From noon to 1:30, we watched and recorded the patterns around the parking lot. Maria's taco truck did steady business, but we counted at least 40 people who looked at her line, checked the time, and walked on to other options. "There's demand that isn't being met," I told Jasmine as we sat on the hood of my car reviewing her photos. "This area is developing, but the food options haven't caught up yet." "So what are you thinking?" Jasmine asked, though her smile suggested she already knew. "A food truck park," I said, the idea crystallizing as I spoke it aloud. "We clean up the lot, add some basic amenities, seating shade, maybe some string lights for ambiance. Then we invite a curated selection of food trucks to operate here, charging them a reasonable daily fee, plus a small percentage of sales." Jasmine's eyes lit up. "The infrastructure costs would be relatively low compared to opening a restaurant. You could start small and expand as it catches on." For the first time since my parents' death, I felt a flutter of excitement. That evening, I dove into research studying successful food truck parks in other cities, local health department regulations, and the costs of basic site improvements. The food truck industry had exploded in recent years, with entrepreneurs offering everything from traditional street food to gourmet cuisine on wheels. Yet most operated nomadically, constantly searching for profitable locations and building customer bases that could follow them. By offering a consistent, well-located space with complementary food options rather than direct competition, I could solve problems for both the vendors and their customers. Office workers would know exactly where to find a variety of lunch options every day. Trucks would have guaranteed foot traffic without the uncertainty of searching for daily spots. I spent the weekend creating a detailed business plan, drawing on everything I had learned from my marketing career and my failed subscription box venture. This time, I obsessively analyzed potential pitfalls and built contingency plans for each. The biggest hurdle would be funding. The initial renovations weren't extravagant, but they would require more capital than I had in savings, especially since I needed to maintain my apartment and living expenses until the business generated income. When banks turned me down for loans due to insufficient collateral and the speculative nature of the business, I wasn't surprised. Without my parents' connections or Amanda's resources, I had to find another way. Jasmine introduced me to her cousin Miguel, who had successfully launched several small businesses and occasionally invested in promising startups. Over coffee at a cafe near my parking lot, I presented my vision with the confidence of someone who had nothing left to lose. "Food trucks are trendy now, but what happens when the fad ends?" Miguel asked, playing devil's advocate after reviewing my business plan. "People will always need to eat lunch," I replied. "The trucks themselves might evolve, but the fundamental need won't change convenient, diverse food options in areas with high daytime population density. As this neighborhood continues to develop, the value proposition only gets stronger." My passion must have been convincing. Miguel agreed to invest $60,000 for a 20% stake in the business. Combined with my savings, it would be enough to transform the basic infrastructure of the lot and cover operating costs until we became profitable. I named it Starlight Market, reclaiming my parents' cruel joke about sleeping under the stars and transforming it into something beautiful. The tagline came naturally: food that reaches for the stars. With Miguel's investment secured, I quit my marketing job to focus on the project full-time. Every waking hour was devoted to turning my vision into reality. I met with city officials about permits, hired contractors for the basic construction work, and began recruiting food trucks to commit to regular schedules. The work was exhausting but exhilarating. For the first time in my life, I was building something that was entirely mine, answerable to no one's vision but my own. Every decision, from the layout of the seating areas to the color of the entrance sign, reflected my personal aesthetic and business judgment. Amanda texted occasionally, her messages a mixture of condescension and curiosity. How's the parking lot project going? Still living in that tiny apartment? Let me know if you need help with the utilities. I left her messages unanswered, channeling my resentment into productivity instead. The best revenge wouldn't be a cutting response, but undeniable success. As permits were approved and construction began, my vision for Starlight Market inched closer to reality. Each small victory felt like a personal triumph over years of being underestimated. The parking lot that was meant to be my parents' final insult was becoming the foundation of a future they had never believed I could build. Transforming an empty parking lot into a vibrant food destination was a marathon of challenges, setbacks, and small victories. The initial construction phase revealed problems that hadn't been visible during my preliminary inspections. Inadequate drainage, electrical systems that needed complete updating, water access issues that complicated the installation of restroom facilities. Each new problem meant adjustments to the budget and timeline, forcing me to make difficult decisions about priorities. The comfortable seating areas I had envisioned were downgraded to simple picnic tables with umbrellas. The landscaping plan was reduced to basic planters that could be expanded later. To save money, I took on as much of the physical work as possible. Weekends found me painting, assembling furniture, and installing string lights alongside the contractors I could afford to hire for the skilled work. My hands grew calloused, my skin tanned from days in the sun. But watching the transformation fueled me through exhaustion. The first major setback came when the city inspector flagged issues with our electrical plan. "You can't run these lines the way you've proposed," he explained, pointing to the diagram. "And the panel you've installed doesn't meet commercial code for this type of venue." The required changes would add nearly $8,000 to the budget money I simply didn't have. For a moment, panic threatened to overwhelm me. Was this how my venture would end, defeated by a technicality before it even began? That night I called Miguel in desperation. "I need to find a licensed electrician who can solve this problem creatively and affordably," I explained. "Do you know anyone?" Miguel's network came through with Jordan, a master electrician who specialized in commercial renovations. After reviewing the site, he proposed a solution that would meet code requirements while minimizing additional costs. "We can reconfigure the existing infrastructure rather than replacing everything," he explained. "It's more labor-intensive but uses fewer new materials." Jordan's expertise and willingness to work evenings after his regular job saved the project. He even introduced me to a plumbing contractor who offered similar creative solutions for the water access issues. As the physical space took shape, I focused on curating the perfect mix of food vendors. Through Maria's connections and extensive research of the local food truck scene, I identified potential partners who offered complementary cuisines rather than direct competition. "I'm building a community, not a food court," I explained to prospective vendors. "Each truck will be the exclusive provider of their type of cuisine, so you won't be competing with similar options." My marketing background helped me craft a compelling value proposition: guaranteed prime location, built-in customer base, reduced daily fees compared to premium city spots, and the benefits of collective promotion. Instead of each truck marketing independently, Starlight would promote the entire experience, bringing in customers that individual trucks might never reach. To my surprise, interest exceeded available spots. The initial plan accommodated 6 trucks daily, but more than 20 expressed serious interest in regular rotation. The solution came in creating a schedule that allowed different trucks on different days, giving customers variety throughout the week, while ensuring each vendor had consistent, predictable slots. Social media buzz began building even before we opened. Jasmine created stunning visuals featuring the transformation of the space and profiles of each food truck, which I used to create anticipation campaigns on Instagram and TikTok. Local food bloggers picked up the story of the parking lot to paradise transformation, intrigued by both the concept and my personal journey. A reporter from the neighborhood paper came to interview me 3 weeks before our planned opening. Her feature story, "From Parking Cars to Feeding Crowds, a Daughter's Unexpected Inheritance Transforms Neighborhood," brought attention from larger publications and generated community interest. The article mentioned nothing about Amanda's inheritance or my parents' unequal treatment. I had decided early on that Starlight's story would be about looking forward, not back. The success of this venture would speak for itself without needing to reference the hurt that had catalyzed it. As opening day approached, unexpected help arrived from surprising sources. Maria introduced me to her brother, a skilled carpenter, who built beautiful custom planters at cost. Jordan, the electrician, returned with friends to install additional lighting as a weekend project for fun. Residents from the nearby apartment building volunteered to help with final painting and setup. The night before our grand opening, I stood in the center of Starlight Market taking in the transformation. Where once there had been only cracked asphalt and weed string lights now twinkled overhead, casting a warm glow over colorful picnic tables and wooden planters bursting with flowers. The freshly painted entrance featured a star-studded sign welcoming visitors to Boston's newest culinary constellation. And 6 food trucks were parked in their designated spots, prepped and ready for tomorrow's launch. Maria's Mexican cuisine, Asian fusion from Golden Dragon, gourmet grilled cheese from Melt, artisanal pizza from Fire and Slice, Caribbean flavors from Island Spice, and sweet dreams for desserts. Exhausted but elated, I sent a single text to Amanda. Grand opening tomorrow at 11 if you'd like to see what I've done with my inheritance. Her reply came minutes later. Sounds cute. I'm busy with a case but might stop by if I finish early. Her dismissive tone couldn't diminish my pride. Whether she came or not tomorrow would mark the beginning of something that was entirely mine. Something built from what was meant to be a punishment, but had become an opportunity instead. As I locked the gate that night, I looked up at the actual stars above Boston's skyline and smiled at the irony. My parents had told me I could sleep under the stars as a joke, never imagining I would build a business that would welcome hundreds to gather beneath them. Grand opening day dawned clear and bright, as though the universe itself was celebrating with me. I arrived at 6 that morning, hours before our official opening time, to ensure everything was perfect. The vendors began arriving shortly after, their excitement matching my own as they prepared their specialties for the day ahead. I made extra everything, Maria told me as she chopped vegetables for her signature salsas. Better to sell out than not have enough. By 10:30, a small crowd had already gathered at the entrance. Word had spread through social media and the local news feature, bringing curious neighbors and office workers eager to try the new food destination. At precisely 11, I unlocked the gates and welcomed the first customers to Starlight Market. What happened next exceeded even my most optimistic projections. By noon, the market was packed with people lining up at every truck. The seating areas filled immediately, creating a lively atmosphere of conversation and enjoyment. Every few minutes, someone would approach me to express delight at the concept or compliment the transformation of the space. I work across the street and walk past this lot every day. One woman told me, balancing a gourmet grilled cheese and tomato soup, "I can't believe what you've done with it. This is exactly what the neighborhood needed." Local news stations sent cameras to capture the success story, interviewing me about the vision behind Starlight and the journey from parking lot to food destination. Standing before the cameras explaining my business model and future plans, I felt a confidence I had never experienced before, the certainty of someone who had created something valuable through their own vision and determination. By the end of that first day, every vendor had sold out completely. Maria hugged me with tears in her eyes, saying it was her most profitable day in 3 years of operation. The others reported similar results, with many customers already asking about their return schedules. The momentum continued in the days and weeks that followed. We quickly added a weekend market with additional vendors featuring not just food, but local artisans selling handcrafted goods. Live music on Friday evenings brought the after-work crowd, transforming Starlight into not just a lunch destination, but a community gathering space. Social media exploded with posts from satisfied customers, their photos of colorful food against the backdrop of our string lights and star-themed decor, providing organic marketing more effective than any paid campaign could have been. 1 month after opening, Boston Magazine named Starlight one of the must-visit food destinations in the city. 3 months in, our financial projections had been shattered, with profits exceeding expectations by over 200%. I had just signed the lease on a small office space adjacent to the market when Amanda finally made an appearance. She arrived on a Friday afternoon, dressed impeccably in a designer suit that looked out of place among the casual lunch crowd. I spotted her from across the market, standing at the entrance, with an expression of poorly concealed surprise. Amanda, I greeted her, approaching with the confidence of someone on their own territory. Welcome to Starlight. She looked around, taking in the bustling scene, every table filled, lines at each truck, the atmosphere vibrant with conversation and music. This is unexpected, she admitted. I thought it would be more of a hobby project. It's a full business, I replied, one that's exceeding projections every month. I gave her a tour, explaining the concept and introducing her to some of the vendors. Throughout, I could see her reassessing me with each detail I shared, her perception shifting uncomfortably. After the tour, we sat at a corner table with drinks from the artisanal coffee truck that had recently joined our roster. I need to talk to you about something, Amanda said, her tone serious. There have been some complications with Mom and Dad's estate. What kind of complications? I asked, immediately wary. She sighed dramatically. The villa needs extensive repairs, the foundation has issues that weren't disclosed before their death, and the property taxes are much higher than expected. That sounds like a problem for the trustee to solve, I replied, remembering that she had been named as the primary manager of our parents' remaining assets. That's just it, she continued. We've discovered that some of Dad's offshore accounts had less money than anticipated. The estate is not as liquid as we thought. I waited, knowing there was more. Amanda never shared problems without wanting something in return. I've been thinking, she said, stirring her iced latte. This place is clearly successful, and it was technically family property. Since we're both daughters, shouldn't we both benefit from its success? The audacity was breathtaking. After inheriting millions while I received a parking lot and a cruel note, she now wanted a share of what I had built from nothing. What exactly are you suggesting? I asked, keeping my voice level despite the anger building inside me. A partnership. I could contribute some capital for expansion, and in return I'd receive 50% ownership. After all, if Mom and Dad had known what this could become, they might have structured the inheritance differently. Years of suppressed resentment bubbled to the surface. If Mom and Dad had known what this would become, they never would have given it to me in the first place. They would have kept it for themselves or given it to you. They left me this lot as a joke, Amanda, a final way to tell me I wasn't worth as much as you. Her eyes widened at my directness. We had never openly acknowledged the favoritism that had shaped our relationship. That's not fair, Priscilla. They loved you in their own way. Their way was to consistently make me feel less than. Their way was to give you a mansion and me a parking lot with a note saying I could sleep under the stars if things didn't work out. Amanda at least had the grace to look uncomfortable. I didn't know about the note, she said quietly. Of course you didn't. Just like you didn't know about all the times they missed my events to attend yours, or how they funded your condo while I worked 2 jobs to make rent, or how Dad always introduced you as my brilliant daughter and me as just my other daughter. I took a deep breath, centering myself. I built this business with my own hands, Amanda. Every nail, every permit application, every vendor relationship I created, all of it, without help from our parents' money or connections. Starlight is 100% mine. Her expression hardened, the familiar entitlement returning to her features. I'll have my attorney review the will. There might be stipulations about the property usage that you're overlooking. Go ahead, I challenged. Mr. Harrington already confirmed my full ownership. There are no restrictions on how I use the property. She stood abruptly. This isn't over, Priscilla. Family businesses should support all family members. We stopped being a family long before Mom and Dad died, I replied. You can't claim family connection only when it benefits you. As Amanda stormed off, I felt a strange mixture of emotions. Anger at her presumption, pride in standing my ground, and a surprising sense of closure. For the first time, I had openly acknowledged the dynamic that had shaped our family and refused to play my assigned role of the lesser daughter. Later that night, as I locked up the market, one of our regular customers approached an elderly man who came every day for lunch and often stayed reading a book through the afternoon. I couldn't help overhearing some of your conversation earlier, he said apologetically. Family can be the source of our deepest wounds and our greatest strength. Which has it been for you? I asked, curious about his gentle wisdom. He smiled. Both. But I learned something valuable along the way. Sometimes the family we create matters more than the one we're born into. Looking around at Starlight, the community space I had built, the vendors who had become friends, the customers who returned day after day, I realized he was right. In creating this business, I had also created a new kind of family, one built on mutual respect and shared purpose rather than obligation and comparison. As I walked to my car, I received a text from Amanda. "My lawyer will contact you next week." I didn't bother responding. Whatever legal challenge she might attempt, I was confident in my position. More importantly, I was finally confident in myself, in my vision, my abilities, and my worth. That certainty was something no inheritance could provide, and no legal threat could take away. The certified letter from Amanda's attorney arrived exactly as threatened, filled with legal jargon and thinly veiled attempts to claim partial ownership of Starlight based on vague interpretations of our parents' will. My own lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Diana, who had built her practice defending small business owners, read it and laughed. "This is desperation wrapped in legal terminology," she told me. "Your ownership is clear and uncontested in the will. They're hoping you'll settle just to avoid conflict." I authorized her to respond with a firmly worded dismissal of all claims. We heard nothing further from Amanda or her attorney after that, though I occasionally spotted her watching the market from her car, seemingly unable to comprehend how the sister she had always considered less capable had created something so successful. 6 months after opening, Starlight Market had become a fixture in the neighborhood and a destination for food lovers throughout Boston. With profits exceeding projections, I began implementing the expansion plans that had initially seemed like distant dreams. The first major move was purchasing the adjacent vacant lot, effectively doubling our size. The expansion allowed for additional food vendors, a covered seating area for inclement weather, and space for weekend artisan markets featuring local craftspeople. What had begun as a lunch destination evolved into a community hub. We hosted cultural celebrations, cooking demonstrations, and a monthly Starlight Showcase featuring emerging local musicians. A partnership with the culinary program at a nearby community college created internship opportunities for students interested in food entrepreneurship. The business model itself evolved based on vendor feedback and market demands. Beyond the daily fees and percentage of sales, we developed a membership program that gave participating trucks priority scheduling and marketing support in exchange for commitment to quality and community engagement. One of my proudest achievements was launching the Rising Star program, which provided reduced rates and mentorship for first-time food entrepreneurs from underrepresented communities. The program helped launch 8 new businesses in its first year, creating a pipeline of diverse culinary talent that kept Starlight's offerings fresh and innovative. As my business flourished, my personal life transformed as well. I moved from my modest apartment to a comfortable loft in the same developing neighborhood as Starlight, walking distance from the market. The space wasn't as grand as Amanda's Beacon Hill mansion, but it was mine, purchased with money I had earned through my own vision and hard work. Jasmine's role evolved from supportive friend to official partner when I brought her on as creative director for Starlight Enterprises, the parent company I formed to manage the growing business. Her design sensibility and marketing expertise helped establish our distinctive brand, while her unwavering belief in me provided emotional support through the inevitable challenges of rapid growth. Through Jasmine, I met Jack, a landscape architect who initially consulted on our expansion plans, but soon became something more. Our shared appreciation for transforming neglected spaces into vibrant communities formed the foundation of a relationship that developed naturally and without pressure. For the first time, I experienced a partnership based on mutual respect and genuine admiration, rather than the constant competition and comparison that had defined my family relationships. Almost a year to the day after Starlight's grand opening, I received an unexpected letter, not from Amanda or her attorney, but from Eleanor Stevens, my mother's oldest friend. The envelope contained a handwritten note and a faded photograph I had never seen before. "Dear Priscilla," the letter began, Your mother and I were friends for over 40 years through all of life's joys and struggles. There's something I believe you should know now that she's gone." The photograph showed my mother holding an infant me, according to the date on the back, with an expression of genuine love that I couldn't reconcile with my memories of her perpetual disappointment. "Margaret struggled with depression throughout her adult life," Eleanor continued. "It was especially severe after your birth. Your father, never an emotionally expressive man, coped by focusing on Amanda, who was older and easier for him to connect with at the time." I sat on my balcony, tears blurring my vision as I read on. "The pattern once established proved difficult to break. Margaret confided in me last year that her greatest regret was allowing this dynamic to continue, watching you grow distant, but not knowing how to bridge the gap. She was immensely proud of your independence and business acumen, though she never found the words to tell you directly." The letter didn't excuse their behavior or heal all wounds, but it offered a perspective I had never considered, that my parents' failings stemmed from their own limitations, rather than any inherent lack in me. Their inability to see my worth reflected their blindness, not my value. This revelation began a new phase of healing. I started working with a therapist to process the complex grief and anger I still carried. Gradually, I learned to separate my self-worth from my parents' assessment of me, to recognize that their treatment reflected their own unresolved issues, rather than my deservedness of love. As Starlight celebrated its one-year anniversary with a weekend festival that drew thousands of visitors, I found myself surrounded by the community. I had built vendors who had become friends, regular customers who knew me by name, employees who shared my vision. The inheritance meant to diminish me had instead become the foundation of a life richer than I could have imagined. The celebration was in full swing when I spotted a familiar figure standing uncertainly at the entrance. Amanda, alone and dressed more casually than I had seen her in years. Against my initial instinct to ignore her, I approached. "Welcome to the anniversary festival." She seemed different, less polished, more vulnerable. "Congratulations," she said, her usual condescension absent. "What you've built here is remarkable." We walked through the market in awkward silence until she finally spoke again. "I need to ask you something, and you have every right to say no." Here it comes, I thought, bracing for another ownership claim or financial request. "The firm is downsizing and I've been let go," she said instead, the words clearly difficult for her. "Real estate prices have crashed, and the villa's value has dropped significantly. The property taxes and maintenance are more than I can handle with my savings. I need advice on starting over." The irony wasn't lost on either of us, the golden child seeking guidance from the daughter who had always been deemed less worthy. For a moment, I considered the satisfaction of turning her away, of letting her experience the struggle I had known my entire life. But that moment passed quickly. Holding on to resentment would only keep me tethered to the painful patterns of our past. "I can't give you money," I told her directly, "but I can offer you something more valuable, a chance to learn how to create something for yourself." We agreed to meet the following week to discuss possibilities. I had no illusion that one conversation would heal decades of damage, or that we would suddenly become the close sisters we had never been. But perhaps we could build something new, a relationship based on adult choices, rather than childhood roles. As the anniversary festival continued around me, I found a quiet moment to look up at the stars beginning to appear in the early evening sky. The parents who thought I would be sleeping under them had instead given me the foundation to reach for them. The journey from that broken-hearted day in the attorney's office to this moment of success and peace had been arduous but transformative. I had learned that sometimes the things we think will break us become the very things that make us stronger if we have the courage to reimagine them. The parking lot that was meant as an insult had become a vibrant community hub. The family rejection that had wounded me so deeply had pushed me to create meaningful connections based on genuine appreciation rather than obligation. The cruel joke about sleeping under the stars had inspired a business name that now represented opportunity and gathering. I had finally stopped trying to prove my worth to parents who would never see it, and instead built something that allowed me to recognize that worth for myself. That was the true inheritance I had claimed, not the land itself, but the freedom to define my own value and create my own legacy. Have you ever had someone underestimate you only to use that as fuel to create something amazing? I'd love to hear your stories of turning rejection into success in the comments below. If my journey of transforming betrayal into triumph resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of resilience and reinvention. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that sometimes our greatest opportunities come disguised as our worst disappointments. Thank you for joining me under the stars today, and remember, the value others place on you never determines your true worth. If my journey of transforming betrayal into triumph resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of resilience and reinvention. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that sometimes our greatest opportunities come disguised as our worst disappointments. Thank you for joining me under the stars today, and remember, the value others place on you never determines your true worth.